and welcome to Cut Through the Noise. Cut Through the Noise is the podcast that helps business leaders increase sales through elevated communications marketing. I'm your host, Aisling O'Rourke, founder of The Communications Coach, based here in the Republic of Ireland. I work with business leaders who want to communicate with clarity, confidence, credibility, and most importantly, authenticity. In this season of Cut Through the Noise, we're focusing in on women in business and the communication tools that you need to thrive in 2026. And you are very welcome to this week's episode of the pod. You know, at the start of a new year, and we are still in quarter one, we set resolutions and goals and marketing plans, and that's all very, very important. But we need to have solid foundations, because if we don't have those solid foundations in place, it can be very difficult to be successful in your business and your career. So today, I want to focus in on personal branding. Yes, bear with me, personal branding. It's no longer an optional extra. It's how you differentiate yourself in a crowded market. Yet many women in particular feel uncomfortable promoting themselves because we're afraid of appearing to be salesy or inauthentic. And I get it. I've absolutely dealt with this myself. You know, my background is as a news journalist and a news anchor, a broadcaster. And in that role, for many years on broadcast radio across Ireland, I had to facilitate the passage of information. My job was to ensure that whomever was listening to me, that they got the information they needed to be informed about what was going on in the world around them. Who I was, what I thought about any of the stories that I was covering, that was irrelevant. In fact, in my world, it would have been inappropriate for me to share an opinion. So when I went out on my own and had to start marketing my services as a communications and media coach, it was incredibly uncomfortable for me to think about this idea of having a personal brand. And it was a huge challenge. The idea of speaking publicly like this, you know, doing video content, sharing my thoughts or opinions or expertise. It was something I'd never had to do before. And while I loved my career as a news anchor, I was ready for that new chapter. I wanted to be myself, be authentic in public and not have to constantly sit on the fence and be neutral. And like, as far as I'm concerned, that particular career served me incredibly well. I really enjoyed it. I was very good at it. But if I wanted to launch myself, I had to create a personal brand. And it didn't really matter how uncomfortable I was with that idea, because how could I encourage my clients to create their own personal brand if I wasn't practicing what I preach? So, you know, for me, it was a hurdle that I had to work on. And that's why today I really wanted to focus in on it. Before we get into the nitty gritty of it, let's break down the stats. Research shows that these fears that we have are well founded. The 2025 Shopper Preference Report has found that 52% of consumers view overly promotional or very salesy content as a sign of inauthenticity. 47% of shoppers say they prefer organic peer reviews and recommendations before making any kind of a purchase. And we talked about that in a previous episode where we focused in on getting testimonials from clients and users of our products. So if you haven't listened to that particular episode, it was episode 5 of series 11. And that was my conversation with Aoife McHugh of Timeless Celebrations Ireland. In another survey, 86% of consumers said that authenticity is important when deciding what brands they like and support. And 90% of millennials in particular identified authenticity as being crucial to their decision to buy into that company, whether it was buying a service or a product. When customers perceive a brand to be authentic, trust and loyalty increases. And I'm always talking about the importance of minding your customers and your clients, because a happy customer, a happy client, they're the best brand ambassadors that you literally can't pay for. they're the ones that will go out and talk about the amazing experience that they had with the communications coach or whoever it might be, and therefore encourage others to do business with you. But here's the catch. Conversely, 57% of people feel that less than half of brand created content is authentic. And 20% of consumers will unfollow brands they see as being inauthentic. Now, look, authenticity, it's a word that gets bandied about all the time, and it's far more than a clever tagline or a very polished LinkedIn headshot. It comes from aligning what you say with what you do, and thought leaders on personal branding recommend embracing your genuine self and showing appropriate vulnerability. That word appropriate is very important. And being transparent about your journey. And do this in a consistent way across your channels. So the funny thing about personal branding, and I think the irony of it all, particularly for millennial women, we were raised in an era of heroin chic and, putting on the mask before you left the house in the morning, making sure that everything was finessed and perfect. And now we live in an era where part of being authentic includes things like getting ready with me videos, which you might be talking about an event that you're hosting a particular day. But it actually involves showing a bare face on camera, which takes real guts and is a real difficulty for myself. I don't know that I've ever actually gone that far, but I think it's a funny one, really, when you think about it. But the reason I bring that up is because being authentic online, how much is appropriate and how much is too much vulnerability. And that's something that you will have to decide for yourself. It's not something that I can write you a prescription for example, But I will say that the more that you share about the behind the scenes of running a business or having a career in corporate, the more people are likely to engage with you because they have a feeling that they can trust you because they're learning more about you as a person and not just as a business. And I know that can be really uncomfortable, but actually building that piece of trust with your consumers, whether it's in video, it's in blog posts, in posts on social media, or in how you show up in the world, it really helps people see the human behind the business. And that human connection, it's really, really powerful. According to the same report, authentic reviews increase conversion rates by 120%. And user-generated content can lift customer loyalty by about 2.5 times. In other words, people trust people more than they do polished marketing copy. And that's why we're seeing the advent of influencers on TikTok Shop, for example. But we have to get into it. And how do we go about doing any of this? So personal branding starts with self-reflection. We have to ask ourselves, what values drive my business? What problems am I uniquely positioned to solve for my customers? How do I want my clients or my colleagues to feel when they work with me? And we need to really actually think about that. And sometimes that self-reflection piece is the hardest job of all. But when you do spend time, and I would encourage you to get out a pen and paper, to really actually set aside time to think about this. And then you can look at using these answers that you've come up with as the foundation to your messaging. So again, what values drive my business? What problems are you uniquely positioned to solve? And how do you want clients or colleagues to feel when they work with you? So for instance, because I've worked in the media industry for 20 years now, 2 decades, I'm uniquely positioned to help people with their communications, their marketing, and particularly engaging with media outlets. I'm particularly skilled at helping you build your confidence when it comes to public speaking because of my lived experience of having to learn to do just that to hundreds of thousands of listeners on a daily basis. And I want my clients to feel that they can trust me, that I have their back, that I'm there to support them and to help them advocate for themselves. Not to do the publicity for them, but to give them the confidence and skills to do that public relation piece themselves. So that's where I would start if I were doing this exercise for myself. And then I'd look at behind the scenes type content that shows a glimpse of the process, that maybe celebrates client wins and invites my audience into the journey. And encouraging user generated content such as testimonials and customer stories as case studies is a really useful way to do that. So, in my own case, as an example, when I work with a client in the days after the project is finished, I will send an email requesting a testimonial. And I have an easy, it's a friction-free form that they fill out. They have the option to put the testimonial in as text. They can upload it as a video because we all know how important video content is. And then I can use that across my social channels. I'll also ask for a LinkedIn recommendation or a Google review. Okay, and that depends on what the client is most comfortable with using. Recently, I've even gone so far as having the client that I mentioned earlier on, Aoife McHugh of Timeless Celebrations Ireland, on Cut Through the Noise to do a live testimonial, to put myself in that uncomfortable position, just so that I practice what I preach, that I really do show you how much I believe in the importance of this validation, these testimonials and customer stories, because third-party social proof signals authenticity to your target market. And it also, for the most part, reduces the pressure on us to talk about ourselves. There is something, and perhaps it's an Irish thing, okay? And we do tend to talk ourselves down a lot as Irish people, but we don't like this idea of saying, yeah, I'm great, I'm awesome, That's something for the Yanks, the Americans, they're good at that. And that's a mindset that we need to stop. We need to take ownership of our successes and our wins. But even at the very beginning, the easy entry into that is to ask for testimonials. And an important question that you can ask as part of that testimonial gathering process is to ask for the impact that your work with them, your product has had on their lives and their work. Because that impact piece is something that you can really use as social proof online, particularly, and as case studies if you're giving a presentation to really create a strong, credible personal brand. Now, it is important here. I'm talking about online because for you, it could be Instagram. For me, it's LinkedIn. But I'm not saying that you have to follow the temptation to be everywhere. Focus on platforms where your audience actually spends time and be intentional about how often you post and what you post. Now, we do live in an era of being constantly on, and there is this pressure to, I must post on TikTok 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And look, if you followed me for a while, you'll know that sustainability is a core part of what I believe in and a core value for me. So look, I will take time off social media. I will take breaks from it. I don't think we need to be constantly online talking about our work and our businesses, because that, I just don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's healthy. But it's not a hard and fast rule. Like, I will say that, posting at least 3 times a week if you're only starting out is very helpful. And if you do decide to take a break, recognize that your reach will dip. And that's okay, because you can build it back up. You have to decide what you're comfortable with yourself. Now, I want to talk about quality here for a moment around personal branding in particular and consistency. So, for instance, because I have a podcast and I've worked in audio for most of my career, a lot of people will talk to me about, oh, I want to have a podcast. Everybody has a podcast. We have to have a podcast. And yes, having a podcast is a wonderful part of personal branding. It is something that I help clients with as a podcast coach. But for example, if you're trying to build a personal brand, and if your company website and your LinkedIn are really lovely and polished and you've got your brand colors all sorted, and then you decide, I'm going to throw together a podcast, and Ash, I'm not going to record it properly because you're like, nobody cares. And it sounds like you've recorded the audio down a well. that will negatively impact your personal brand. So when we talk about personal branding, it's not just how you show up online, okay? It's every part of how you show up in the working world as you, as your brand. It might be the colours that you choose to wear because they align with your brand colours. It is in the consistency with which you show up with good quality work. If you want to engage a new marketing tool like a podcast, well, then that has to be at the same quality of everything else that you do. Consistency across all platforms in terms of branding and personal branding in particular is absolutely vital. And finally, we have to remember that personal branding is a long game. Like a lot of it to begin with is that reflection piece and is getting over our own fears, maybe some imposter syndrome, and dealing with them first. The long-term object of personal branding is to build trust and not to chase likes. It's a marathon, not a sprint. They are both cliches, but they're cliches for a reason because actually it's true and they work. Personal branding takes time to be recognized, but it does build credibility. And it's something that you can leverage over the long term as opposed to flash in the pan strategies like jumping on the latest TikTok trend, for example. And once again, we're doing this in order to build trust amongst our target audience so that they know we can do what we say we do and our values align with theirs. We can be trusted with that promotion. We can be elevated to new ranks in corporate or, do you know what? I want to do business with you because I like you, I like your values, and I like what you do in the world. And we can only get there by building a credible personal brand. If your communication strategy is anchored in your values, your voice will resonate with the right people. And in our next episode, we're going to explore how storytelling can help turn that authentic personal brand into a really powerful marketing tool. This season of Cut Through the Noise is designed to help you think differently about how you communicate and to give you practical insights that you can apply immediately. And if you'd like a bit of help, if you would like to work in a supported and structured way, you can book a discovery call with me to explore our mastermind, the Clarity Collective. The no pressure conversation. It's about whether or not finding out if the Clarity Collective is the right fit for where you want to lead. You can email me to find out more. hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. And as always, all of the links are in the show notes below. Thank you for listening. It is a noisy world, but clear, confident and authentic communication is what allows you and your business to stand out from the sea of sameness and cut through the noise.